Napoleon. So, I went to see the movie yesterday, and I've been allowing it to ruminate in the back of my mind now for about 24 or so odd hours to see if I would be as disappointed today as I was when I left the movie theatre. And yes, I am, as this entire movie was a tremendous missed and wasted opportunity. And I had two primary fears. One was that trying to crush down the entire life and career of Napoleon Bonaparte, one of the most remarkable generals in the history of humanity, not to mention his many achievements as a statesman, into a single movie would be impossible at best and simple folly at worst. And second, that the movie would be a modern movie, focusing as much on Josephine, whose appearance in the trailer was unwarranted at best, frankly, to the near complete exclusion of Napoleon. And both of these fears turned out to be 100% justified, as the result is not even just a disappointing movie, it is frankly a really bad movie. Not even just from the perspective of a movie on Napoleon, but frankly as a movie overall, as one of the movie's greatest failings is that it has next to no true narrative structure around the life of Napoleon. This movie might as well be called Josephine as it might be called Napoleon, as their relationship is the near sole universal focus of the entire 2.5 hours. Everything is put in the perspective of these two people, to the point where many of Napoleon's greatest achievements are simply just glossed over. His conquest of Italy, for example, his first major achievement in military matters and his first significant campaign is skipped entirely. We have a time skip where he just arrived in Egypt and goes, well, Italy surrendered without a fight, which is not true at all, and his campaign into Russia, it's one battle scene. Waterloo lasts for all about 5 minutes or so, and includes Napoleon himself personally charging the British lines at the head of hussars and uhlans. Uhlans wielding sabres, of course. But if we were to start in on the sheer number of historical inaccuracies in this movie, we would be here till tomorrow. Whoever wrote this movie invented more facts about Napoleon's life than he ever researched. And if we were to simply criticize the movie on that basis, it would be an awful movie about Napoleon, but far worse, it is simply just a bad piece of entertainment, as its focus is placed in the entirely wrong place. Okay, so here's the thing. Napoleon had a stormy love life, to put it mildly. His relationship with Josephine was mutually abusive at the best of times, and, well, singularly abusive at other times. Josephine herself was not particularly fond of Napoleon, until she started to realize the sheer amount of luxuries could be granted through him. She cheated on him quite famously with multiple people, and the movie does mention that, but what it fails to mention is how unfathomably heads over heels for her that Napoleon was. If you wanted to focus a movie upon his relationship with Josephine, you should have made the Italian campaign the movie, where he was writing her 2 or 3 times a day and constantly inquiring as to why he wasn't getting letters back. You could maybe cap that off with his campaign in Egypt, where he found his first other lover, but that too is entirely ignored. And worst of all of the other major characters are barely even, in fact, I don't even think that they are mentioned. I don't think you hear their names almost a single time in the movie. And this is an age of giants. We have Ney, Davout, Dumas, Kutuzov, hell, the Duke of Wellington barely exists in this movie. Napoleon himself only exists in reference to Josephine. The movie ends with Josephine essentially, earlier on, Josephine says to Napoleon, "You are nothing without me." And he accepts that. And the movie ends with Napoleon going, "I guess you were right, Josephine. Without you, I am nothing." We have reduced the man who brought Europe to its knees, who defeated countless, enormous coalitions against him, who won battles no one else could, to a cuck, to a hopeless romantic. And again, that is part of Napoleon's story. When Napoleon fell in love, and he did so often, he did so deeply. He had multiple, massive and deep relationships in his life, many of them whom eclipsed Josephine, frankly. And if you truly wanted to focus this around Napoleon's love for a single person, you should have focused it around his love for his son, rather than Josephine. Because his son was somebody he was willing to give up his position for, his title for, someone he deeply adored and cherished and viewed as his future. As the movie also completely glosses over Napoleon's view on family, how he placed family members in charge of positions that they had no hope of actually mastering because of his Corsican uprising, how he believed family was the strongest thing ever, and how his relationship to his mother, it's mentioned once by Josephine, and even then in passing. If you want to talk about the most important woman in Napoleon's life, it wasn't Josephine, it was his mother. He had her painted into his coronation photograph, I was about to say, a painting, because she refused to attend, something that wounded him deeply. But in the end, this should not have been a movie. This should have been 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe. And you could have focused one of them on his love life. You could have weaved it in here and there. Instead, because of this desire to have the focus on Napoleon's love life instead of his achievements, you end up in a situation where they're like, okay, well, he is Napoleon. He's kind of famous for being, a bit of a war guy as well. So we need to add some of that in there. And it ends up being detrimental to both stories, as you end up with the entire movie merely being a collection of haphazardly organized scenes, thrown together with little to any reference, to the point that somebody who doesn't know Napoleon's story is just gonna be confused. You're at one point, he's at Austerlitz, and he's fighting against the Austrians and the Russians, and he defeats them, and he makes peace with the Austrians, and the Austrian prince says like, "Oh no, you're not going to see Alexander here. He rushed off in quite the huff. He's very angry at you." And then in the next scene, or a couple scenes thereafter, Napoleon is sitting down with Alexander, and Alexander is going like, wow, you're such a cool guy. I wish we could be brothers and stuff. And the battles. Okay. Austerlitz. Austerlitz could have been a movie, an entire movie, as Napoleon wins that battle through incredible planning, strategic brilliance, and maneuvering. Instead, in the movie, it's reduced to a dumbass all-out infantry brawl, which they just toss cavalry into because it looks cool, I guess, sprinkle some horses in there. And then with a Kekaku Dori, where the enemy retreats onto the ice, and Napoleon goes like, "Now unveil the cannons. Don't fire the cannons in the incredible enfilade flanking positions we had earlier and cause massive casualties to the Austrian army. No. Wait until they're on the ice. Then we'll fire them." Now, the whole thing with crashing the ice, that did happen during the battle, but it wasn't planned out, nor was it very effective either. It mattered for next to actually nothing on the grand scheme of things. And yet, and here, that could have been an excellent, cherry on top of the story of Austerlitz. Yeah, it could have been a good cinematic ending, seeing the Russian flank sink beneath the ice as blood fills the water. It could have been a fantastic end, and then you zoom out to see the son of Austerlitz, which is not mentioned either, by the way. He calls them the heroes of Austerlitz, which he did do, but the son of Austerlitz, that was the Jesus of the Napoleonic era for the French, and it's just not mentioned ever. Borodino is displayed as just a pure infantry fight, no massive Russian fortifications. It is then mentioned that, Napoleon, he lost 28,000 men, he did. Yeah, he also killed more Russians, despite the Russians having vastly superior positions. And at the end of the movie, as a final little insult here, is the fact that it's like, oh, Napoleon, he had 61 battles. These are all of the people he killed, all of the casualties. Look at him. Wow, he killed so many people. Napoleon, unironically, seriously, wished for peace every single solitary time. When he says in the movie, I never declared war upon anyone, he's pretty goddamn close to correct in that. But he was never accepted into the club of royalties. There were coalitions formed against him, and he had to fight a lot of battles, a great deal of battles. And then at the end be like, no, wow, look at this warmongering madman. Controlled by his wife he was. I've seen the meme, right, that this entire story just makes him out to be a pathetic loser, and the meme millions must die because I got cuckolded. And that is kind of what the movie comes across as, and it is a tremendous shame. And Joaquin Phoenix as well, he was the wrong guy for the role. He has some excellent scenes when he is allowed to be emotional, to display Napoleon at his weakest. He does a fantastic job, but he utterly fails to portray Napoleon at his strongest. Napoleon comes across as a loser throughout the entire movie. And again, the historical inaccuracies. I mean, the Battle of the Pyramids. The Battle of the Pyramids. Egypt should have been an entire goddamn movie itself, but it does. The Battle of the Pyramids is over in about 30 seconds with Napoleon firing at the pyramids. Something he would never do. In fact, as I was watching that, it reminded me of a scene in another documentary, Hitler, The Rise of Evil, which, was like, Hitler was a pretty bad dude, but how can we make him a worse dude? Oh, I know, let's have him beat the shit out of his dog. Hitler loved animals more than he loved people. And Napoleon was an enormous fan of Egyptian ancient history, a massive fan. He was fascinated by it deeply. He created his own Mamluk regiment, for God's sake. He was an Egyptophile. And to have him just go like, oh, those giant things over there, just shoot them, it'll scare the natives. This is a terrible movie. This is, unironically, a terrible goddamn movie. And even the scene where he returns and he speaks to his men, they even managed to ruin that. Where the famous scene where he comes like men of France, or soldiers of the Fifth or whatever, I think I'm paraphrasing here. Like, do you want to kill your emperor? And nobody fires? Even that scene, they mess up. As Napoleon is there with his old guard and ridiculously outnumbered by the army sent against him by the King of France. And they're standing there. Obviously a massively one-sided battle. He has no chance. Napoleon just walks out, stands up to them. Anyone amongst you who wishes to shoot his emperor, here I am, and nobody does so. Even that scene they managed to reduce and ruin, which is goddamn impressive. If you have any interest in Napoleon as a character, then do not watch this movie. If you've got to watch a movie, in fact, I'd prefer you'd read a book, because there's tons of really good ones about him. But if you need to watch a movie about Napoleon, find the 1970s movie Waterloo. It is a vastly superior movie to this, and has a hell of a lot better battles as well. In fact, I'll probably be running that as a little bit of an example of what they should have done over to the side instead of Napoleon, which is, again, if it was merely just a bad movie about Napoleon, then that would have been something. But it is even just a bad movie as well. And ignores the entire cast that should have surrounded him. Again, the story of Talleyrand alone, or again, Wellington, or Ney, or Davout, or Dumas. But no, Josephine. Josephine is the focal point. Yeah, don't watch this movie. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you very much for watching. And I'm gonna go and be sad now as I've reminded myself of all the pain I had to sit to for 2.5 hours. Have a good day.